But the truth is, I was a terrible entrepreneur. No sense of P&L. I did not care about the numbers at all. And finally, passion will only take you that far.
Very good afternoon to one and all present here. It's a lovely afternoon, it's a sunny afternoon, and we've got the lovely Anupama Chopra with us. This is Jaipur Bytes, presented by Sapna Book House. It's an honor, honestly, to be sitting in front of you, because not always that you are on the hot seat. It's always the interviewing personality that you do always with all your guests. But today it's going to be exciting because we have someone who has been always interviewing people, and today let's see what she has for us. So wonderful, Anupama, just to start off, there's something similar that you and me both do. You are in the business of building a bridge between the cinema and the audience, and I'm in the business of building a bridge between the author and the reader. And the beauty of this bridge is that we tend to go beyond the stories. And let's start off from there. You've been writing as a critic, a cinema critic, for so many years. The evolution of cinema, from what it started off, from the single screen movie to the multiplex, and then we move to the OTT, and then we have the social media, short stories and movies too. In all the changes that you have witnessed as a film critic, what is that one constant that you believe has stayed fresh from the time you started till today?
I think the fact that good stories travel, that it's fundamentally all about the storytelling. Whether that storytelling is today, now you have micro dramas. It's 90 seconds, 70 seconds. I can't even get my head around that's how long the storytelling is. But the fact is that people will only watch something if it engages them. And that has stayed true no matter what format, no matter what version of storytelling you're consuming. Back in the day when I started in the early 90s, movies were inevitably 3 hours long. Matlab 3 ghante ki to hai hi. So, and then they got shorter and shorter, though many filmmakers are now going back to longer films. But then you had OTT, then you had like YouTube formats, It keeps shifting, but fundamentally, it's engaging storytelling that stays.
Fantastic. And, while we see the evolution of being a critic as a writer, a little bit of the history as to why you chose to be a critic, a film critic. Because when you started off, to what I've read about you, is that it wasn't a very lucrative or wasn't a very exciting job, because today there are so many critics and different formats of being a critic. But back in the days, it was very simple. You had to watch a movie, review the movie, behind the scenes and the stars, and probably tell a different story to what the cinema says to your reader or to your audience. So why did you choose this format of probably your life?
So can I say it's still not lucrative? Nobody gets into film criticism to be rich. Let me please, break that notion instantly. And in terms of, is it exciting? It continues to be a little too exciting, I feel. We could do with a little less excitement in our lives, I think. Why did I choose it? I didn't actually choose it. I became an entertainment journalist. So I fell in love with actually the Hindi film industry. And then I fell in love with Hindi films. And I say Hindi because that's all we were exposed to. I grew up, my formative years, college, school was in Mumbai. We watched Hindi, not so much. Actually, we watched a lot of Hollywood big star films and a few Hindi films. But I really deeply fell in love with just the chaos of the Hindi film industry. And I said, I need to get educated to report on this. So I got a master's from Northwestern in journalism. And then I came back and I worked first for Veer Sangvi at Sunday, and then I went to work at India Today, where I was. And at that time, it's impossible to imagine now, but at that time, movies, Hindi movies were considered so low priority that they were like, हाँ नई लड़की है, ये कर लेगी. It was like that. And I spent about 12 years at India Today writing about every aspect of the business. The trends, the stars, the, money, all of it. And somewhere along the way, they said, okay, you now also start reviewing. So it wasn't like I've never, I didn't study. I haven't done media studies. I've not said, oh, I'm going to grow up and be a film critic. It just happened by way of falling in love with the films.
Wow. So it was more of a chance and a chance that came by good for at least the audiences like us, because I'm sure that most of you who know Anupama and have read her reviews, personally, I feel that it's no nonsense. It doesn't have gossip. It's very unfiltered and it's very candid, which I believe that is a need of the hour, especially in the internet age. Everybody is commenting on everything and everybody. And with your interviews that I've happened to see at the Film Companion as well as at the Hollywood Reporter, I believe there's a lot of genuinity in what you do. So coming to that aspect, you started Film Companion, an entrepreneurial journey that you had. Unfortunately, you had to close it in 2024. We'll get to why, but why did you choose to start Film Companion? How did that happen? And how was the journey over the last, I think, 8 to 9 years? And finally, in 2024, you shut doors to it. How emotionally tiring that was for you?
So I started because I used to do a show on Star World called The Front Row, which was also reviews and interviews, sort of the same format. And then our contract with them expired. And actually, it was Vinod's idea. He said to me that, we're going into the next sort of era now, and sit-down television is not going to be where people look for reviews. No one's going to say, oh, at 8:30 on a Friday, she will come, which was the time of The Front Row. He said, you have to be available 24/7. When somebody's making a decision or needs to know about a film, they should be able to search for you and find you. And that made perfect sense. And I knew nothing about being an entrepreneur or running a YouTube channel. But we just began because we knew how to produce. That's what we could do. And Film Companion was an incredible journey for 10 years. We were there from 2014 to 2024, which is what Dining with Stars, the book, is about. It's our best interviews from Film Companion. But the truth is, I was a terrible entrepreneur. No sense of P&L. I did not care about the numbers at all. And finally, passion will only take you that far. But also, I felt that as a platform, I felt like we had peaked. That my learning had stopped. That I could continue to keep doing reviews, keep doing interviews, and we were all very happy. It was a lovely place. But I just felt like, what's the next act? You have to keep reinventing, because otherwise, if you get comfortable or you stagnate, it's death. So for me, it was a very emotionally wrenching decision to close Film Companion, but I think it was the right one for that time.
I think I can relate to this because as a bookseller, stories keep evolving. And if an author decides to stick to only one format or a genre or one era in writing, he or she would definitely stagnate. So I think as a storyteller in your right, I think what you have done, an evolution between a Film Companion to today, the Hollywood Reporter. If you could throw some more light on how different is the Hollywood Reporter to a Film Companion, and why did you choose to get back to interviewing, but in a different channel or a different format with the Hollywood Reporter?
So the Hollywood Reporter is like a nearly 100-year-old American brand, right? It's a brand that I have.
P&L was sorted.
P&L was sorted, thank God. I still have to look at it though. But it's a brand that I have read and admired. And in fact, the roundtable format was originated at the Hollywood Reporter, which we all just stole, aram se. But when they came to India, I was like, I would love to do this because it's such a sharp learning curve for me, because the Hollywood Reporter is also a physical magazine. So it's not just a YouTube channel, it's a physical magazine, it's a website, it's social media. So the platform is much bigger. The scale is much bigger. There are all these things we wanted to do that we couldn't do at Film Companion because we couldn't scale it up. Again, because I'm a bad entrepreneur. But here, we could do all of those things, which is why I decided that for my next act, the Hollywood Reporter India would be the best place to be.
Fantastic. But I don't know why you say you're a bad entrepreneur, because you're a fantastic author at least. And that itself is an entrepreneurial journey, I'm sure, because it takes more...
Doesn't pay the bills.
But I think that's taken care of. It takes a lot of blood, sweat and tears for you to be an author, because what people read, it's probably a week long of reading to complete your book, or complete any book, or a month long of reading. But the effort that as an author you've taken consistently over so many months and years is something I would like to touch upon next. Is you started off writing as an author with your first book, which became a blockbuster. For everyone to note, the Sholay, the book that she wrote, her first book, went on to become the best book and went on to win the Filmfare Award of the best book in cinema. And that was on an iconic movie, Sholay. So why did you choose to write a book on an already iconic film? I would like you to delve a little bit more, probably elaborate more on the emotion behind writing such a book, when Sholay itself was such a magnanimous movie in itself.
So I actually wrote the book, and Sholay celebrated 50 years last year, guys. My God, what a movie. What a film. It's a movie I love. And actually, it wasn't my idea. The book was written when the film celebrated 25 years, so 2000. And Ramesh Sippy's, the director's children, came to me, Rohan, Sheena and Sona, and said that we really want to do something to mark 25 years. So can we do a book? And I didn't know anything about writing books. And I just said, I love the film and I would love to give it a shot. And I'm so grateful that they asked me to do it, because that experience of talking to all those people about putting that film together was just so special. And I'm just so happy that the book exists, because some of those stories are so precious. And I just feel like Indian cinema does not archive enough. We need to be archiving more. There need to be many, many more books on cinema. So that was, thankfully now there are. At that time there was like nothing, literally nothing. And I was so grateful to have that opportunity.
And when we talk about the book, again, the Sholay, you said you went and spoke to a lot of people to write that book. Any interesting story that people have not heard of? The BTS of Sholay, probably of a cameraman, or a hairdresser, or something that you believe that you would like to just share, that why it's important for people to know what happens behind the curtains. That's a very important aspect, and that can happen only by a storyteller. Because what you see in a 3 hour long movie is what you feel, you carry an emotion outside. But the emotion that goes behind that, if you could dwell a little bit more about that, it'll be really helpful for the larger audience to know.
So one of my favorite stories from the book is actually Amjad Khan and Gabbar Singh. That was Amjad Khan's first film. And there was a lot of conversation about his voice and whether it was heavy enough for a villain. Was it serious enough? Did it bring enough weight to this role of a larger-than-life villain? And there was a lot of debate, like, should it be dubbed? Should it not be dubbed? And of course, Ramesh ji, in all his wisdom, said no, he's going to go with the voice. And Sholay, once it became a success, had an LP. There was an actual record of Sholay ka dialogues. And Gabbar Singh was one of the most popular characters. Eventually, Gabbar Singh was selling glucose biscuits, right? But his voice and the when he says "Kitne aadmi the," that became like those records sold out like crazy numbers. And there was a story which I think Asrani ji told me, that at one point Amjad ji was traveling somewhere in Gujarat, very remote area, and he had gone there for a shoot or something, and then he stopped by to have tea at a very ramshackle sort of tea stall. And there he heard that guy listening to a cassette of the Sholay records, and he heard his own voice coming back to him from this middle of nowhere. And he just broke down and he wept because it was so emotional for him, because he didn't know whether his voice was going to be there, not be there, what would happen. And then his voice became a selling point. Yeah, it was an iconic voice, iconic dialogues. And that really moved me, that you never know and how fragile artists are.
Wow. And of course, a lot of other stories about Sholay is in her book. Coming to your second book, Anupama, The First Day, First Show, you talk about Bollywood, you talk about the celebrities. So what are the common misunderstandings of Bollywood trenches in terms of a celebrity and the life that they go through? So can you just throw some more light on the misunderstandings of a Bollywood celebrity?
Meaning, how are they misunderstood?
Yes.
You know what I just said? I think we don't see perhaps how fragile they are. Because what we see is the glamour, what we see is the money, we see the fame, we see how they're walking around now with an entourage of 8, 10 people, you know. So it feels like they own everything, you know, in terms of just confidence levels. And, you know, but the truth is artists are fragile and artists are insecure and artists are vulnerable. And I think we forget that because the exterior is so shiny.
And your third book, in interest of time, I'm trying to just take one question per book, though there are a lot of questions that we could ask you from each of your book. DDLJ, Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, again, a classic, modern, iconic film. What does a movie take to become a classic, modern, iconic film when you compare it with something like Sholay? I wouldn't call that a modern classic film. I would call that a classic, iconic. But a modern classic film like a DDLJ, what do you think works for a movie to be that classic, iconic tag?
You know, honestly, it's impossible to know. Nobody knows what makes a film succeed, because then everybody would be making successful films, right? I think it's the stars align. You tell a story that comes at a time when the sort of cultural fabric sort of is at a certain place. Like when I did the deep dive into Dilwale Dulhania, and one of the things that kept coming back was that India had just moved into liberalization. It was just very fresh. You know, we had just got choices on television and foreign goods that now you could just buy everywhere. And perhaps there was a certain amount of insecurity about what it means to be an Indian. And this film told us that you could do everything. You could wear the Levi's jeans and you could be abroad and you could speak with an accent and you could, race an aeroplane like Shah Rukh does. But your heart, but dil hai Hindustani. So this cocktail of Indian values, but very snazzy, fashionable Western exteriors, all of this sort of came together. Plus, of course, such charming leads and so much emotion and that music, my God. When Raj and Simran meet in those fields, everybody loses it. I think all of it comes together. But can you plan this? You can't plan it. You can never plan it. You can only tell a story that you love and that you care about and tell it in the most honest way possible. And then some films become classics and some don't.
And anything that Shah Rukh Khan has told you about DDLJ in your conversations with him as to what he thinks or what he thought about DDLJ's classic, iconic tag?
No, the irony is he didn't even want to do it because he was not interested in being a romantic hero. He started out killing women in Dar and Bazigar, So that he was like this grey character, and he was like, I didn't even want to do it. But Aditya Chopra told him that only when you become a romantic hero, only when you become the guy that moms and daughters, everybody loves, can you be a major Indian star. And he very sort of reluctantly kind of said, Acha, okay, let me do it. But otherwise, he wasn't convinced.
I think the rest is history. I'm sure. We are so glad that he did it. How important is mentorship in the industry? Aditya Chopra mentoring Shah Rukh Khan. I'm sure a lot of others have got that mentorship from various other producers and leading stalwarts in the industry. You think mentorship is important given the age and time where nepotism also plays a very, a different angle in the entire industry?
Of course, mentorship is critical, and I hope more and more, especially filmmakers, do it in an intentional way, where you actually pick up people who are not connected to the film industry, who don't have familial connections, and you groom them, you help them to move up. I don't think we do enough of it.
You think it's happening or not happening at all?
It's not happening enough. It needs to happen intentionally so that every filmmaker who's has certain power and clout and ability to mentor should mentor and bring in 5 more newcomers, in the way that, let's say, Anurag Kashyap does or Ram Gopal Verma did back in the day, like really gave new actors, new directors, new writers a voice, enabled them to find a platform. So I think it has to be done far more intentionally. I mean, look, as far as nepotism is concerned, the truth is it exists everywhere. Every business, politics, I think sports is the only place where you can't have nepotism because either you perform on the field or you don't. Who your dad is doesn't matter. But the truth is otherwise, it's everywhere. So I think the film industry gets a bad name because nepotism is everywhere. Is nepotism something that stunts growth? Absolutely. Absolutely. When you're only casting your family and friends, that is going to create a vacuum, and it's going to create, it's not giving enough chances to people outside. But I think the landscape has changed a lot in the last decade.
Well, very well said in terms of nepotism and it being, there across different domains in industry, which I completely agree with you. And your next book, Conversation with the Stars, when you take into
Dining with Stars.
Before that, I think you have a lot of other one. So I'm going to get to Dining with the Stars towards the end because it's your latest one. But when you interview celebrities, actors and producers and directors, you think they carry the PR status when they answer to your questions? Or you think that the PR angle is never there when they are in a candid conversation, or they always carry it? Because every conversation with the day and age that we are in just gets multiplied. The exposure that the conversation gets across different platforms is huge. So what do you think is the PR status of celebrities when it comes to conversations, specifically with you?
I think everyone is much, much more careful. Everybody across the board is now more careful with what they're saying because, like you said, it can be taken out of context, it can be misused, it can be cut into a reel with something else and become a meme. So, everyone is afraid कि कहीं कुछ गलत ना हो जाए, and you have no control over that narrative. Once it's out, right? You can't stand there and say, I didn't mean it, but I meant to say this. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, everyone is very, very guarded and much more mindful than they used to be.
Well, that's nice. And we have a couple of questions. I believe I've got a signal for keeping the conversation even more short than what I intended to keep it. Let's look at authorship because we're in the wonderful JLF festival. You as an author versus you as a film critic, right? How much more responsibility you need to be taking as an author? Because a film critic reviewing a film probably stays until the film stays. But stories travel beyond boundaries, beyond time and era. So what do you think is your additional responsibility as an author when compared to being a film critic?
I only write about the movies. I'm not writing fiction. So I think it's the same level of responsibility. I would never say that I can be a little more casual as a film critic than I am as an author. I think you have to bring to it the same rigor, the same sort of research, the same level of just not doing something that's that can be problematic. So for me, it is the same, again, because I don't write fiction. I'm not making things up. I'm only reporting what there is.
Well, I've got for the audience here, and specifically for me, I really want to dig your mind into a little fun side of it, which is called the rapid fire, which will probably take a couple of minutes. But before that, the last question is Dining with the Stars, guys, in front of me, is Anupama Chopra's latest book, which released last month in December. Why do you think people should be reading this, and how important is this book when you look at Bollywood as an industry?
So, this isn't just Hindi movie stars, it's also stars from many, many South industries. And I think it's interesting to read because it gives you an insight into how artists work, So, and it's especially interesting because it's multiple industries. So there's Diljit Dosanjh, but there's also Fahad Fasil, but there's also Shah Rukh Khan, and I think that makes it very interesting to see different traditions of storytelling, different cultures, different sort of moments in their career. That also makes a difference of where they are, how they are thinking. To me, that's interesting. And then to have them all laid out against each other. It's all in between 2 pages, So that for me is what makes the book valuable.
I think all of us, you did have a very long book signing just before this event. So it's already a very popular book. Ladies and gentlemen, we are almost at the end of Jaipur Bytes presented by Sapna Book House with the wonderful, amazing, dynamic and enterprising Anupama Chopra. We're going to take the last segment before the claps begin. A quick minute or two on the rapid fire side of Anupama. I've got my iPad with me and I've got a couple of very interesting questions for you. You can answer that in a word or two, but unfortunately I have no hamper because I am no Johar, I am Nijesh Shah. The first question, one film you wish you could watch time and time again.
I think surely.
Wow. Great cinema is about head or heart?
Heart, always heart.
Right. Most overused word in film reviews today?
Problematic.
Okay. One performance you think history will be kinder than the audience will, but you thought it should have really worked with the audience?
From last year, I think Homebound was one of my favorite films. And I think it was just so compassionate and so beautifully told, a very difficult story. I wish more people had seen that, and I think it will stand the test of time.
Right. And a couple of questions on book writing and authorship. Writing a book is harder or reviewing a film?
Oh, God, I don't know. They're both very hard. Writing a book is just more lonely because it takes so long.
Okay, and one book, not yours, every filmmaker, actor, or a producer, director should read.
It's the Alfred Hitchcock and Truffaut conversation.
Fantastic.
That was incredible.
And the last question before we wind up today's wonderful podcast is, if you had to choose between the yesteryear's actors in a round table, who would those be it Hollywood or Bollywood, and someone who you've not interviewed?
Oh my God, though I did interview him once, but it was too long ago, Dilip Saab. Imagine Dilip Kumar on a round table. Though he spoke with so many pauses that it would be difficult. But it was so beautiful to hear him speak. Imagine a round table with Devanand, Dilip Kumar and Raj Kapoor. And Madhubala. Oh my God,
Madhubala. That would break records on YouTube at least. And currently, out of all your interviews, probably your top 2 or top 3 really interesting ones that you've enjoyed as a host in your roundtables.
So I think the Actors Roundtable, which we did in 2019 at Film Companion, was just out of the world because we got so many different actors from across the industry. So we got Ranveer, Alia, Deepika, Vijay Sethupathi, Vijay Devarkonda, Manoj Bajpayee, Ayushmann Khurrana and Parvati Thurovotu. So you literally had an amazing artist from every almost every, not every. We didn't have, enough representation of some of the other industries, but you had so many incredible artists in one room. To me, that was very valuable, and it still continues to get views. It's at some 10 million plus.
Well, this can go on, and we've got Sarthak and the team looking at us. We'll have to, unfortunately, call it a day for today's podcast, but it was lovely to be interacting with you, Anupama. This is Jaipur Bytes, presented by Sapna Book House, and your host, Nijesh. And look forward to having you at Sapna down south in Bangalore, and hosting probably more lengthier discussion, and look forward to have a very engaging conversation soon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been very kind, very
Thank you.
silent in the entire conversation.